So what happened with Harbaugh and the Vikings, best you can tell?
As best I can tell from the sources I've talked to, Jim Harbaugh went up to Minnesota with the expectation that he was going to get an offer to be the head coach there. And people I had talked to in the building were convinced that Jim Harbaugh was going to jump at it. And then something over the course of this extensive interview process, and I was told something seemed to have gone wrong around 3 o'clock. Things kind of soured. And I have not gotten a great answer on what exactly that was, that kind of turned things. But he did not get offered the job and is going back to Michigan, obviously. And Kevin O'Connell's getting the job. So I don't know if it's necessarily that Jim Harbaugh is a strong personality. He is a different guy. I don't know if the leadership at the Vikings looked at it and said, I'm not sure we want to work with him or feel like it would be best to work with him. And I think they looked at him, and Kevin O'Connell, yes, they both played quarterback in the NFL, but Kevin O'Connell is a very different personality than Jim Harbaugh is. And I think Kevin in his 30s compared to Jim in his late 50s, no doubt Jim Harbaugh's had a ton of success in a brief amount of time in 4 years in the NFL. But I think for the Vikings, that just seemed like a much more attractive proposition. And so without an offer, Jim Harbaugh's back as the head coach at Michigan.
What are your sources saying why Harbaugh was interested in the NFL? Is it based on the fact that Michigan cut his salary and that is something that he just, put in his mind and wouldn't forget and decided that now would be the time to try the NFL? What happened? Why now, essentially? I
had heard, Rich, that the relationship was a little rocky there internally, and I think that had something to do with it. And I think, look, if he was going to leave, this was the time. You and I talked about this. He just won the Big Ten for the first time in almost 20 years. They whipped the arch rival. All that stuff lined up well. And then, everything I'd heard from people close to him was he still wants a chance to make a run at winning a Super Bowl. And at 58, this seemed like a really ideal time. But the way the circumstances lined up and the way it worked out in his interview process with the Vikings, I think if it's Jim Harbaugh, and this is also from talking to some people close to Jim, was the expectation was Jim Harbaugh is different than a lot of the candidates. He's not a first-time head coach. He has been to a Super Bowl before. He was wildly successful as an NFL head coach. It was almost like it was expected if Jim Harbaugh wants a job, he's going to get the job. And that certainly didn't play out this way, this cycle. And I can't imagine it, like going forward, because this was such a unique situation in terms of it played out so publicly. I know when we talked about it, what was it, a month ago or so? And then it got more momentum as more dominoes fell. It was public. He was talking about with recruits. Guys on his staff were feeling like Jim wants it. He wants out. And you have his defense coordinator, Mike McDonald, leave after a good year to go back to the Ravens to run that defense. And now since you have a big vacancy on the staff, you've lost a lot of really good players to the NFL off that playoff team. So we'll see, because this is not a team that has been at all active in the portal either, where almost everybody else, even Alabama, as good as they are, they've got 3 terrific players out of the portal. Michigan has a bunch of holes, especially on defense. We'll see how aggressive Jim Harbaugh and this staff is going to be going forward, because I do think there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be smoothed out internally there.
Well, what is it? I mean, and I know I'm asking you multiple questions at once, which is a bad thing to do as a host, but I'll do it anyway. But did you say he mentioned to recruits, I'm thinking of going to the NFL, like he was open on that process? He was telling recruits that?
My understanding was, and I think it was reported by one of the recruiting sites in Michigan, that he was, including with like one of the top recruits they have coming in, was open with his family and transparent. And if that's the case, I mean, good for him that he was, because that's not the norm when it comes to stuff that happens around recruiting. So I think because of that, a lot of people were like, oh, he's definitely gone. And it didn't play out that way. And I don't know if this feels like the Costanza scene from Seinfeld where he just shows back up to work and acts like it's completely, I think that's actually a Larry David bit originally, right?
Well, actually, Larry David did it in real life after he was fired
SNL,
from Saturday Night Live, and he put it in there. But as you know, the Michigan football program isn't the human fund. So, how does this work, man? How does it work now? Like, what are they going to do to make sure that recruits know he's not going anywhere ever again?
I mean,
what happens?
I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can really do anything assurance-wise, no matter what you do in a contract at some point. Look, if Jim Harbaugh at 58 is going to, he's not going to get any younger, obviously, but if he is going to draw more NFL interest to the point where people are going to hire him away, Jim Harbaugh is probably going to have gotten his team back into the playoff or more. It's not like if he turns around and goes 8-4, people are going to say it was more of a fluke or a one-off or whatever. So I think if I'm Michigan, I'm like, I want him to be an NFL commodity, because if that's the case, he's doing something right. And if he's not, then we ride the Jim Harbaugh kind of roller coaster a little bit. But I think the first orders of business for them are, obviously have to patch up things internally with the staff, probably with some of the players. I mean, we'll see how that works out, see how it goes forward with. I'm sure publicly he and the AD will try to put a positive face on this. And then he's got to find a new defensive coordinator. I thought that was, Mike McDonald turned out to be a terrific hire, but they're going to have to be active in the portal and get some transfers to, it's like coming out of the spring at the very least, when we expect another wave of influx in the portal, because that roster has some holes if they're going to try to repeat as Big Ten champs.
But, I mean, he did come up, Michigan did, if I'm not mistaken, ranked 8th in recruiting class?
Yeah, 8th or 9th, yeah. I mean, It's a good class, but again, I mean...
Did they lose anybody based on the last few weeks that you can tell?
No, and that's one thing that I think got overblown, because the optics weren't great that he was doing it on signing day, but they were basically done. I mean, Jim Harbaugh had given the staff off. What I was told is they had a junior day on Sunday, and maybe there was 24 prospects there. I think the biggest challenge, Rich, is going to be, Ajabo, Aiden Hutchinson, Dax Hill, Ross. You have
what incredible
really
year.
good.
Incredible year. And kids that were incredible.
Really good players who are gone. Hassan Haskins. Look, you're going to get Ronnie Bell back. The two quarterbacks, they should be better with more time in the system. The offensive line has a bunch of guys back. But they got to rebuild the defense. And I think that is the first order of business there. Because remember, this was before last year. This was the Achilles heel of that team when they played really good teams. And so I think that's, look, it's got to be it's got to be business as usual. It's got to be back to work. And I think right now, now that he's going full, enthusiasm unknown to mankind now has to be with an energy, because the energy of the other people who are trying to make it to the playoff is at an incredibly high level, because they're so active, with the portal, because schools, to some degree or others are getting very engaged in how they are using NIL as a recruiting, appeal to build to stock their rosters. And I think Michigan is going to have to get more up to speed on some of those fronts right now.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.